Hello, my name is Phil Edwards. I want to talk to you today about Firebase. In particular, Firebase has got some wonderful features which enable you to create serverless mobile and web applications. That is, mobile applications and web applications with no need for some complex back-end server. All the server-side functionality can be put into the cloud. So first of all, what is Firebase? Well, this is a product that was acquired by Google in 2014. And it was originally a messaging system for mobile applications so that people could chat with each other. But people started using it for other things. And so when Google acquired it, they started to add other functions to it, other acquisitions, and also their own products. So now Firebase consists of over 25 components, which are fully integrated with the Google Cloud services. Of these components, they're ever increasing as new ones are added, as they're put into beta and then go into production, and some of them are deprecated after a while, but we're up to about 25 at the moment. So what is it? Well, it's basically a series of software development toolkits, or SDKs, which enable front-end developers to programmatically access cloud functionality, which is normally done via a back-end server. There's also a web interface, a console, which enables you to control it. And there are other APIs and applications which can also be used to control Firebase. It's quite a complex beast, but each of the 25 components work together or independently, and you can choose which ones you want to use. But the main thing here is this, that front-end developers can build applications without needing someone to develop a back-end server for them. So this is the part that we're going to focus on. So Firebase is built on top of the Google Cloud Platform. And so it basically has access to all of the GCP infrastructure. There's every GCP project is also a Firebase project and vice versa. So you can either start one way or the other, create a GCP project and make it a Firebase project, or create a Firebase project, which will also create a GCP project. In terms of billing, it's actually very, very cost effective. The basic plan called Spark gives complete free usage of Firebase up to usage limits, and they're quite high. So you can basically host a fairly large application at zero cost, which is quite amazing, really. Then there are other products which add pricing to it. If you need to go to a more expensive plan, contact Ditto, because they can give you more details about these pre-paid plans that they can use. Firebase also integrates with other pieces of functionality, some popular tools, in particular Google Ads and AdMobs. It's very useful to be able to put adverts into your mobile applications and then actually be able to download the ads or click on a link and it'll download an application, integrate with the Play Store. And you've also got the BigQuery for storing information and being able to query large data sets. So everything's based on web consoles. There's the Google Cloud Platform web console, and there's also a Firebase web console. They're actually quite separate, but they interoperate with each other. So when you do something on one console, it can actually affect the other one. So configuration can be done in either console. Some things can only be done in one, some things can be done in the other, and other things can be done in both. In terms of development, there are toolkits available for iOS, basically any Apple application, Android, and also for web applications, JavaScript. There's also an administration toolkit which enables you to programmatically manage Firebase itself. There's also REST APIs as well, which give a much lower level access to it, but you can do all sorts of stuff completely programmatically without necessarily having to use the web interfaces. Now, traditional applications, sort of mobile and web, you've got some kind of front-end functionality. So the front-end functionality would be the mobile phone app, either Android or iOS, or to be a series of web pages. Now, they typically talk to a back-end server, usually by exchanging REST messages backwards and forwards between the app and the server, and the apps tend to be fairly lightweight, and the server does most of the work. This often means that you have to do some transformation of data because the form that the actual server will return data in may not be the form that you want it for the front end, so it has to be transformed. But the problem with servers is you have to build them, you have to maintain them, update them, back them up, and all those things, which take time and also require particular skill sets. There's also the cost. If you've got a back-end server running in the cloud, for example, it's actually going to incur costs by just being there when it's running. Okay, so we want to be able to move away from that with some possibilities of doing that. So, but also when it comes to developers, most developers are either front end or back end typically. You either get iOS developers or Android developers or web developers. Some are a combination of them all. Full stack developers, which are both front end and the back end, are fairly rare to find. And with the use of Firebase, the front end developers can actually do the back end development without having to know the back end languages and how to set up the servers, etc. So the serverless applications, how does it do this? Well, the first thing is Firebase hosting. That is a facility for hosting a web page or website, static content, which can include JavaScript. But the beauty of it is you don't require a web server. You just literally deploy your website directly into the cloud. What's more, it actually replicates your website at all the endpoints in the cloud. So whenever anybody accesses it from anywhere in the world, they'll go to a local copy of your website without having to go halfway across the world to get to it if you happen to be, say, in Australia and the website's in the US. You can also access storage in the terms of Cloud Firestore, the real-time database, and other forms of cloud storage, which enable you to store information or upload images or upload videos from your application, store them in the cloud, and then retrieve them or share them with other applications. Now, Cloud Functions and Cloud Run is where the kind of magic happens. These are where you can actually push a piece of code or a Docker container, for example, directly into the cloud, and that does the back-end processing. But it's very lightweight and it scales to 0, which is absolutely wonderful. So if it's not being used, you don't get charged for it. But you can do a lot with these things and be able to have a completely serverless application because the cloud itself becomes the server via these mechanisms. And as Cloud Run uses Docker containers, anything that can be Dockerized can be run as part of a server, the back end. There's also analytics, which where Firebase kind of started, which automatically monitor your application. So how long does it take to start up? What network and CPU usage does it use? Custom metrics, you can say, I want to know every time somebody changes the page. And there's also Crashlytics, which says that if something goes wrong, it'll give you some idea of the impact on your user base. So Firebase, as I said, have got about 25 components. They're divided up into a number of categories. So what I'll do is quickly go through each of them. The first set of components are the quality ones. So I've already mentioned analytics. So you can say, I want to know this event, when a page changes, when the user does this, when the user does that, and certain properties about the user. And analytics can give you a report on it. You can actually decide what your user base is. You can define demographics to say, I want to target this set of users, and the analytics will give you reports on everything that happened with your application. The Crashlytics tells you that if your application actually crashes, which hopefully it won't, the Crashlytics will tell you how many users were affected by that crash. It'll give you a total number of users that experienced the crash when your application failed. Then we've got performance monitoring, which comes for free really. It measures startup time, network requests, and again, gives you information that you can use to assess how your application is performing, where any bottlenecks are, and where any costs are being incurred. There's also the test lab. Now, one issue with mobile devices, particularly with the Android devices, is that there are so many different devices on the market, and you need to be able to support a fairly large range of them. This means you've actually either got to have the physical devices or use an emulator, and the emulators tend to be a bit slow. What the Firebase Test Lab does is it provides a set of real devices which are in the Google data centers, and you can run your new applications on a set of real devices and get the statistics back on them. So that means you can do testing on a wide range of different devices without actually having to have them physically there. For developers, perhaps authentication is the most widely used aspect of Firebase. Firebase enables you to authenticate users using a number of different methods. It can use, for example, an email address and a password. You can do it by a telephone. You put your telephone number in, it sends you a message you respond to, and it authenticates you that way. You can also do it using the federated identity providers, which are Google themselves, Facebook, Twitter, and GitHub. So if you've got an account on any of those particular services, you can actually authenticate yourself to an application as long as it's been switched on. So with the authentication, you have to say, okay, I want people to be able to authenticate using Google and email address and password, and you can choose which ones are allowed, and then the users choose which ones they want to use to authenticate themselves. The real-time database is the original place for storing basically no SQL data in forms of basically a JSON object for user data. It's for storing information about, say, user profiles. Cloud Firestore is kind of superseding it now and is going to be used in preference. So if you go into the real-time database, it'll say, do you really want to use Firestore, which is the preferred option now. There's cloud storage, which is for bigger objects, so things like videos and images, which are large files, and you can just put anything there that you need, or but users can actually upload their photographs, their videos for use in your application. We've already mentioned Firebase Hosted. That will enable you to put static content into the web, basically a web server without a web server. Cloud Run, and we've also mentioned in Cloud Functions, they simplify the process of a back-end code. You simply push the code straight into the cloud without having to worry about how it goes, how it does it, and where it goes. And you don't have to worry about scaling or anything else. The cloud will take care of it. For data storage, there are security rules. You can say, okay, this user can only access this data if they're logged in as themselves, or there's a whole bunch of rules that you can use for the data storage. Then there's the other features which are for growing your application. You've got cloud messaging for exchanging messages or pushing messages to mobile devices. Remote configuration is where, say you've got a mobile phone application and you want to change the home page to customize it for, say, Christmas. What you do is you can use remote config to change the configuration of a bunch of mobile phones on the fly. You just change the configuration, and then the user will say, do you want the new config? And it'll download it, and it'll reconfigure your application without having to do a reinstall of a new version of the application. There's Firebase dynamic links enable you to put a link to another application within an application. Somebody clicks on the link, it'll take them to the App Store or the Play Store. Then they'll be given the option to download the new app and take you to a particular page on it. And you'll get a report about when this happened and how many times it happened, so you get some idea about how many people have actually followed that link. App indexing gets you into Google search, so your app will get itself into the search categories, so that's a useful tool to have. There's Firebase invites, which were an extension to dynamic links, but they've now been deprecated in favor of dynamic links themselves because they've enhanced them. Google Ads, basically you can use the Google Ads to put adverts there, and you can download the adverts into your application, and also the analytics. And there's also AdMob, which does advertising within applications. So this is all geared up to promoting services or other applications within your application for marketing purposes. Now, Firebase is constantly growing. And what happens is when new features appear, they're put in beta. You see a beta symbol on the console when you look at that particular application. You're perfectly free to use them, but what there is a warning that the APIs may change. They're not stable because they're in beta, but you can start using it, and then as soon as it goes public, then the APIs will stabilize, and then you can use them fairly freely. But they tend not to stay in beta very long. So if you find something in beta, it'll go live maybe in a few months. It depends on the priority within the Google Firebase team. Another interesting development in beta is the local emulator. Now, you've got certain functionality within Firebase, such as cloud functions. You have to use the real cloud to do some local testing. Now, that's a bit of an inconvenience because you've got to be set up to the cloud and you've got to be connected to it. The local emulator suite actually emulates parts of the cloud on your local machine, so you can run Firebase functionality locally. Obviously, it's not for production code, but it's great for development work, particularly if you haven't got a good enough network connection to connect to the real cloud. There's Firebase extensions, and these are pluggable solutions which the Firebase team have put together, which provide you with additional functionality. So you get these suites of things. Oh, okay, I'd like to have this extension. There's a whole range of them to choose from. Then you just switch on the extension and then it will be available to you. There's the ML kit. This is for machine learning. So if you want to do things like image recognition, face recognition, or recognizing sites, whatever it is, you can use the ML kit, and that uses the rule sets from machine learning. So you teach something how to do recognition using a machine learning kit. Now this is quite expensive usually. I did that once doing recognition of handwriting. It nearly killed my Mac because it was used so much computer power. But once the machine program has learned, you can then use the resulting data to be able to do image recognition fairly lightweight. And the ML kit enables you to do, say, recognition either in your application or put the image into the cloud and do the checks in there. There's the application distribution. If you've got a group of testers who want to test your new application, this enables you to push a new version straight into their phone without having to do anything else. So it greatly facilitates the process of getting testers' devices up to date. The predictions is an extension to the analytics, where what it does is it uses machine learning to predict how, say, a new version of the application is going to work and how many people are going to use it and what the uptake is like to be. So you can run these predictions. Then you've got A/B testing, where you can do market experiments, where you say, okay, I want to run this experiment with this new version of the application under these conditions, and you can run these experiments to see how the market will respond. And then there's in-app messaging. Basically, you can target users to say, okay, we notice you've been using this application. Would you be interested in using this new feature, or would you be interested in buying this new product? And that gives you some means of targeting individuals for marketing purposes. So Firebase is actually quite little known, relatively speaking, and it's got a huge amount of potential. And as it's growing and more applications are coming on board, you'll find that it's got more potential for being used for other things. So whatever your usage of the cloud is, or particularly for mobile devices, whether it's gaming or whatever, you can actually use Firebase to enhance your functionality, and you can do it piecemeal. You don't have to take on the whole lot. You can say, oh, I'd like to use this bit, and let's try it, and then maybe try something else later. It's nice and secure and scalable, and also many of the things are tolerant of the network being unreliable or even missing. So for example, if you need to upload some data and the network is not connected, what will happen is it'll store it locally, and the moment the connection is made again, it will then push the data into the cloud and update everything to make sure everything's up to date. And the most important thing is you can develop applications without the need for a back-end server. In fact, Google are now promoting this big time on their Firebase websites. There are pages that saying build serverless applications, which was not previously the focus of Firebase, and this is very much a feature of this new Cloud Run, which has changed things quite dramatically. We also provide a 4-day on-site intensive workshop on Firebase. The whole idea is that it can be customized to your business, and you can bring your own code, bring your own team, and you can actually install Firebase on your application or just try it out and then go back with the results and say, okay, we've now got a device with an application which is Firebase enabled, and we can do all these great things. And as there are so many components to Firebase, you choose which ones you're most interested in, and the workshop can be focused to the particular interests or requirements that you may have. And if you want to know more, discuss it with Dito at ditoweb.com/consult, and explore the features, discuss the business requirements, and maybe think about using one of the workshops. Okay, done.